Happy Friday morning, Saturday, whatever day time zone you're on. We're recording this Thursday night, about 45 minutes before kickoff. It's Lead, and I'm here with Brian, the Occupy Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, man? Man, you know what? I'm so glad to actually be able to watch football this week after being stuck at a wedding last weekend. It was like literally, if what my hell would be after life, that would be
Oh
it.
my
Just being
God.
stuck on a Sunday, not being able to watch football for eternity.
Well, clearly your man's or whoever wedding you went to doesn't listen to this podcast, right?
No, it's funny on the Periscope. Someone was like, "Who has a wedding on a Sunday, and how'd you even get invited?" I was like, "Dude, I don't." That's a whole nother Periscope for that to happen.
Hey, well, Thursday night too, man. You get to watch a great game for a change. We have the Panthers at the Steelers. You got the plug up by the time this podcast hits the internet. It's going to be done. But how you feeling about this game?
Pretty excited. It should be a high-scoring game. One of the more exciting Thursday night games we've had in a while. So I'm pretty excited for it. And I think even if you read the Thursday plug after the fact, you can still learn some things and thinking about game theory and how to create your lineups, especially for these single game slates. So definitely worth a read, even if you read it after Thursday.
For sure. And let's talk about the single game slate because last is it Sunday night you won 2 tickets to the $250 FanDuel end of the year GPP, and that was that Sunday night or Monday night?
That was Monday night. That was the Cowboys Titans game, and the key there was, and we outlined it in the Monday plug for these. It's kind of a really simple equation for figuring out who to use in your MVP spot for these single game slates. And as you know, if you don't play single game, the MVP spot, it gives you 1.5 times their normal fantasy points. So it's really important to nail that spot. On DraftKings, it's a little less important because MVP prices are different. But on FanDuel, there's no difference between if you use a guy in MVP or in the flex spot. He has the same salary no matter what. So It's not necessarily as important there. I mean, it's more important there because it's just raw points. So, but when you have a lower game total like we did Monday night, typically simply just use running backs. And I had Deion Lewis in my ticket winning lineup as my MVP. And games like tonight, on these higher scoring games, you want a receiver or a pass catcher. Generally, those guys have higher ceilings when the game's expected to shoot out. And by doing that, it makes your decisions really simple by just starting your lineup with the MVP based on the game total.
It's smart, and obviously you did it with success on Monday night. For the first time all year, won a ticket on a Sunday night with the Green Bay and New England game, and another thing I'm starting to see more and more is with the high risk contest, not using your entire salary and also being even more contrarian really can make a world of a difference.
It can, and you figure everyone who's playing wants to use that salary cap. You want to fit 5 guys under that cap. So naturally, just the way the human brain works, if you have one spot left, you want to fill it as much as you can of that cap. You have 8,500 left. Very rarely is a person going to say, well, I'm just going to use a 6,500 person instead of this 8,500 person. But when the probability for a tie is so high, especially in higher risk contests, and you're shooting for 1 out of 294 for a ticket, or if you're playing a single entry GPP, or you want to ticket into a single game GPP mass entry, you have to, if you want to have a chance at owning that top slot by yourself. Because if you just play it straight up and you fill the whole salary cap, you play it pretty straightforward, you're going to have that same roster as 100, 200 other people.
All facts right there, man. And we're learning. Hey, I mean, this is the first year they've really offered this single game slate, and it's fun as hell, man. And for those higher risk contests, like don't be the lineup I won, and maybe you want to talk about your lineup that you scored a ticket on, but I didn't include Aaron Rodgers, which sounds kind of mind blowing, but at the end of the day, it's about getting return value for how much dollars you're spending. And when those quarterbacks are super expensive and high owned, if they don't deliver, it's a major fade in a high risk contest.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can talk about your lineup too, but especially on teams like New England, like Green Bay, like Pittsburgh tonight, not so much Carolina, but where they have just multiple weapons that can go off. And you get part of the quarterback just by having those weapons on your team. So tonight you could play Antonio, Juju, and let's say Vance McDonald and have 3 receivers. And even if Ben goes off, he might not be in the optimal lineup because all 3 of these receivers go off and you wouldn't be able to fit them in if you had Ben. So I think it's a really good point you make when looking at that. For example, mine was a lower scoring game, and I did have both quarterbacks in my lineup. But on a night like tonight or a night like Green Bay, New England, where you did, you don't necessarily have to have one or even both because it gives you the upside of having those individual players.
Completely. And what did it for me was that Josh Gordon touchdown, right?
Nice.
I think I had Brady, I had James White in the MVP, Josh Gordon, Edelman, who put together a solid game, and I'm trying to think and Scantling from Valdez Scantling, right? So, a combination of guys that were a lot cheaper. And to be honest, if you had A-Raj and Brady, there's no way you could have gotten 3-4 of those other guys.
Right. No, there's absolutely no way to do that. But James White is like a cheat code on those single game slates.
Yeah.
Regardless how the game turns out, he has a massive upside. And even though I said it earlier, a wide receiver or a pass catcher in your MVP spot in those high total games, and that's exactly what James White is. He catches passes out of the backfield more than he runs the ball. So.
And that's where he was in my lineup. And so I think I'm playing 2 lineups today. Full transparency here. I'm just going to enter them in the $1 satellite. And one of them is going to feature both James Conner and Christian McCaffrey and completely fade the quarterbacks, right? As those are 2 guys that, they're pretty much as expensive as the quarterbacks on the slate. So there's no way anyone has both of those guys and another quarterback, right? So then it's like if they go off, I just need, the other supplemental guys to take care of business.
Right, and that's really what it comes down to. I was listening to a podcast earlier talking about just theories and game strategy and high risk contests. Yeah, if you have a guy that's high owned and he goes off, it doesn't really help you. Like, it doesn't really contribute to you winning in a GPP.
There's no leverage, right?
Right, none.
In a higher risk contest, it's, if anything, especially for a ticket, right, you're going to be tied with like a bunch of other people. So
right.
One lineup I made today, I have in front of me. I have Big Ben in the MVP spot, DJ Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian McCaffrey, and Vance McDonald. And the hope is, hey, Big Ben goes off, right, hits Juju and Vance for a touchdown, and then on the other end, maybe DJ Moore, kind of does something. And that's $1,000 less than the cap. That's not going to be a lineup I think most people are going to seek out.
No,
we'll see. That'll be interesting.
That's perfect, especially, and it's not like you're playing the 200,000 person GPP and you have to get first. Like, you literally have to get first out of 294 or something like that. So that's the perfect level of crazy, but not too crazy.
There we go. So moving on to Sunday, man, it is going to be a major slate. I think one of the most fun slates of the season. Am I mistaken? Like, am I speaking too early?
I don't know. I thought last week was pretty fun, and then of course, I had to sit on the sidelines and not be able to do anything.
Right.
And so, writing the plug, I was pretty mad. I was like, God damn it! I can't believe I'm not going to watch most of these games, especially the Rams and Saints game. But just writing the plug last week, I was like, this is going to be a great slate. I haven't sat down to write it this week yet, but just glancing at some of the games, some of the matchups, I do think it'll be a very, very fun main slate.
And what I mean by that is there's just so many something's got to give games, right? I'll go through the list, right? The Bills and the Jets, right? No, lowest I think over and under. No one cares about that game. That's not a game anyone's going to watch, but something's got to give. Maybe one of these teams pops off. Skins and the Bucks. The Bucks are getting lit up left and right by everyone. They're averaging 34 points against. The Skins can't do anything offensively, right? Something's got to give. What's going to happen there? Then you got the Browns and the Falcons, right? The struggling Falcons. The Browns now, without Hugh Jackson, at home. I mean, is this a spot that I don't know. You tell me. And then not to cap it off in a pretty embarrassing fashion, if you look at the 4:00 game, Seahawks and Rams, and this is a game where a couple weeks ago no one really cared about, but now that Seattle's offense has opened up and the Rams lost now in a bounce back spot, could that be a game that blows up? There's just so many. This is a week where, in my eyes, so many crazy things can happen.
If the Rams don't win by 50 in that game, I'll be disappointed. Coming off a loss and then now playing Seattle at home. Yeah, but I agree with the rest of those games. Washington, how will the pace in that game be? They want to slow it down, run the ball, play defense. We're not going to be able to. And then the Browns game, the Falcons are rolling. They're getting Deion Jones back pretty soon. They have a chance to actually make the playoffs, which didn't look possible after they started 1-4. So, yeah, that will be the game to watch. And I think it's an interesting spread, 4.5 points on the road in Cleveland. Really tough to trust Cleveland at any point now, just because their defensive players are playing so many snaps, and that has caused an effect on their defense.
Yeah. Speaking of that game, I mean, what do you make of Jarvis Landry? Right, like, dude's been, we went into this season thinking, Todd Haley and maybe using him like Antonio Brown in week 1, even though, the stats weren't incredible. I think he had 7 catches for 100 yards. The meta, what we were seeing with the routes run and the depth of him were very exciting, but I mean, despite the red zone targets, despite all the targets he's gotten, man, he's only had 200-yard games, and the last one was in week 3 against the Jets.
Yeah, it's really surprising because he does show up in the model pretty highly almost every week because he's getting tons of targets and he should be doing more with them. And like you said before the season started, we mentioned, I think maybe on our preseason podcast or somewhere along the lines, if you look at Jarvis Landry's usage in Miami, obviously, all the jokes were made. He's a running back playing receiver, 5 yards per reception or whatever he was getting. But then you look on airyards.com, which is, it's a great resource for visualizing players' air yards and their usage. And even during his time in Miami, Landry was above league average when he was targeted down the field as far as gaining yards. So it led you to believe that he has this chance, if he sticks into this Antonio Brown role in Cleveland, that he could perform like Antonio Brown. But now he's back to like 4 yards per reception or 4 yards per target, whatever it is. And it really is mind-blowing. Maybe that's who he is, this running back playing receiver. And I don't know. I'm actually kind of surprised that he's performing the same basically as he did last year, just without the touchdowns. Yeah,
it's been, as a Landry owner, it's been pretty frustrating because you can't really bench him. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I haven't even thought about it. It's like I've already accepted starting him, and I'm rolling my eyes as I'm doing it, and like hope, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can't really turn away from that sort of volume in a team that's usually in favorable game scripts. But
are you going to bench a guy who's getting 10 targets a game? Unless he's Jermaine Kearse, I guess. But you're not gonna bench Landry. It's tough. So.
Yeah. Totally hear you that. On Atlanta side, Julio Jones finally caught a touchdown, and it was against my Skins, but it was a beauty. He wouldn't be denied on that screen. Do you think this regression is going to be like an avalanche, or I mean, are you saying he's not going to score till next year again?
He could have had 2 touchdowns if Norman didn't pull him down on that deep route, right? So it definitely could have been multiple scores in that game for him, but I don't know. We'll see some regression here. It's really tough to tell with Julio what's going to happen, but they're going to make a concerted effort to give him the ball more. And just with that type of volume, he has to score more. Hopefully, this regression is just packed into the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. And, he's now had 3 straight 100-yard games, but he hasn't had a red zone target since week 2 and only has 4 on the season. I mean, their offense, they're doing things now, so you can't really, point fingers at Sarkisian, but you'd figure eventually they're going to make it a priority to get him in the red zone.
I mean, they're actually crushing in the red zone after week 1, so it's really hard to, complain about what they're doing, but you would think eventually that you would want to use one of the best players to ever play the position to score touchdowns. But then again, what do we know? We're just doing a podcast.
Yeah, we definitely don't know anything.
Well, actually, I know one thing we do know, and that's
what's that?
You called your great Drew Brees call so far, because if you listen to our podcast last week, we ended the show talking about how, and mostly how Waleed was saying, you need to get To bet Drew Brees to win the MVP now before this Rams game was Brees to go out, has a fantastic game. They beat the Rams pretty handily. And now, what do you know? His MVP odds have been cut in half. He's now 3-1 to win MVP on 5 dimes. All the value has been sapped up over the last 5 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's too late now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. You might as well wait for him to lose again before you bet it.
Yeah, and just like the Rams, we talked about betting them on the Super Bowl, right? Never buy high on these things, but yeah, I mean, the narrative was always there, especially early in the season when Drew Brees had set the when he had broken Peyton Manning's record on primetime television, and now the little things are coming together, right? He has that signature victory at home against the best team up until that point, the undefeated Rams. There's the records there, right? We know that that's like the first thing that matters in MVP considerations. Is your team winning, or are you in a position to even say you're leading a winning team? And then, I mean, the rest is just like Drew Brees being Drew Brees. It's nothing special. I mean, sure, like, he's thrown for more yards and more touchdowns this year than he was for last year. But like, he was playing incredible quarterback. He was playing incredibly last year, like, through the wall. But that's just, we talked about it with
he just didn't throw a ton.
That's
all it was.
Yeah.
He didn't throw that much.
No, I mean, and it's funny how this stuff works. We talked about it with our podcast with Kean Fahy and the year Matt Ryan won the MVP when the Falcons were 13-3, 14-2, just beating everyone. But just the difficulty of throws he was making, like they weren't. Kyle Shanahan was scheming guys open. He had a hell of a run game. They were so effective running the ball in the red zone, but it's, the team was winning, the TDs, the interception rate. So once again, with Drew Brees, like, I don't want to hear anyone say, oh, Drew Brees is having like a comeback, bounce back year. He's doing the same thing at a higher volume and scoring more touchdowns.
Right. I mean, didn't he break the completion record last year? And he set his career highs in yards per attempt. It's not like he had a bad year last year. He had a pretty damn good year. He just didn't throw the ball nearly as much as he normally does.
But hey, Pat Mahomes is still a dog, and he's probably front running right now. So I don't want to discount what he's doing. We know that obviously different offenses and they're doing different things. But boy, are the Chiefs heavy home favorites. The money line. Have you seen the money line on this one?
I can't even imagine. Well, they're minus 16.5, right? So
yeah, they are. It's minus 1,800. So if you want to win $100, just bet at 1,800 on the Chiefs.
Man, we can tell a different podcast some stories about betting massive money lines and the stupidity involved in some of them. Yeah. But
I saw one earlier this season on Twitter from the Bills and Vikings game where someone had laid down $10,000 to win what? I don't even know what it was, and my heart would sink if that happened.
Actually, I'll just tell the story right now because it's a good story for the podcast.
Perfect.
My largest wager ever was for I don't even remember the name of the movie now, but it was for a movie to win Best Picture, and it was minus 3,300.
Oh my God!
And I bet it to win 2 units. And
oh my God!
My family was wondering why I was like sweating watching the award shows. Like, first of all, why even watching the in the first place? There was inside info leaked before the show started or whatever, and so it was pretty much a locked bet. But anytime you have that much money riding, nothing is a lock to you. So from that point on, I have not bet any minus 3,000 favorites.
Wow. That I'm sorry, I didn't know that about Brian. And
that was peak.
Have to reconsider
peak degeneracy right there.
I'm gonna have to reconsider our friendship here. Didn't know you were out here betting on Best Picture. But let me ask you this: while we're on the topic of heartbreaking Brian moments, is that worse than the time you lost $100,000 on a DraftKings GPP because the last at bat of the night was Chris Davis, and literally anything could have had. It was bottom of the ninth, tie game, bases loaded. Literally could have walked, could have struck out, could have grounded out, could have flown out, could have hit a line drive single for the win. anything but a walk-off home run, and that happened.
Yeah, this podcast is taking a turn for the worse after after bringing this up. To be fair, I wasn't awake when it happened, thank God, because I mean, so many things would have been broken: TVs, computers, definitely bones in my hand for sure. That was bad. Yeah, it was.
And the worst part about it is, I mean, this was early in the season, I think, and I mean, I watch baseball, not that much baseball, but me and my roommates, it just happened to be, it was on like MLB Network, and we were like, oh, hey, this is cool, bottom of the ninth, Chris Davis, and all of us were rooting for him to obviously do something because we had no rooting interest, and then we hit a grand slam, we were like all going crazy. And little did I know, the next day when I found out, I was like, oh, yeah. Sorry to hear.
No, I didn't even realize immediately either because I went to bed in like 50th place or something. And, I'm not going to stay up and sweat these when I have work the next morning. So,
yeah.
And so I went to bed in 50th place and I had a pitcher left and I was like, hey, I'm in good shape. Then I woke up and I was like, oh, nice. I got 8th. A pretty nice score. Okay, this is great. This is great because it was off a satellite. I didn't pay much to get into it. So, and then like maybe a couple hours later, I was reading what happened. I was like, oh my God. And then went back and looked at the leaderboard and I was like, oh my God, everyone above me has Chris Davis. And then realized what the massive difference was in the winning. So, yeah. I mean,
so it's a little less painful than actually watching the envelope, the guy pull out the winner of the whatever award it was on the envelope.
I mean, let's just be honest. That guy would not have the person that was taking my wagers would not have been paid if I'd have lost that
one. Oh boy. So, let's jump back into some of these games. I mean, now Chiefs, where do you where do you use your Kansas City Chiefs this week? Or is it going to be in the higher risk contest? Cash? Are they too expensive?
Yeah, I think they are too expensive for cash, especially considering that it could be a blowout. It could be running all second half. I think they're perfect in high risk, and I think their ownership reflects it. Just looking at early ownership, Pat Mahomes like 5 to 7%, I think, in the model. So yeah, I think that's a perfect high leverage spot. Just pray that Arizona keeps it close somehow. Kansas City does have a poor defense, but obviously it's much better at home. I think that's the way to go. And then you run it back with like Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk and just pray that they keep it close and force Mahomes to throw. I mean, it's rare to get a guy with Mahomes upside at 5% in a high risk contest. So that's probably the way I would play it.
Yeah, maybe pair him up with either Hill, Kelsey, Watkins, 2 of those 3, and then try to run it back with Larry. So that makes sense. That's all sound strategy. Lions at the Bears, big NFC North showdown. The Bears are kind of getting Jordan Howard going, right? It seems like, if you traded for him kind of a few weeks ago when his value was super low, post-bye week, you're getting it's another favorite home for him to get a lot of carries.
Yeah, I think this may be the last of the matchups moving forward where you can use him. I think as against these tougher matchups down the road, it'll be more Tariq Cohen games because as they are home favorites, they're able to, he's getting, and that's the reason he's not having fantastic rushing total games. He's just getting into the end zone a couple times a game. So you might want to use him this one last time against Detroit, but then against Minnesota, and then that short week against, I mean, they got really dicked in the scheduling. And I'm not just saying this because I'm invested in the Bears, but they got flexed to the Sunday night game in Week 11 versus Minnesota. So they play 8:30 p.m. Sunday night. But then they have the noon game on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so 8 hours later they have to play another game. So that's a really tough spot for them.
Good going, NFL.
Yeah, I know, right? And then there's even more divisional matchups down the road. So I think Cohen is definitely the guy you want over the second half, but this is one more week where you can use Jordan Howard.
And and the case I'll make for Jay Howe here is the first 4 weeks of the season, he only had 1 game in which he had 3 or more red zone attempts. And now the last 4 weeks, he's had 3 or more red zone attempts. So, of course, when you play the Bills and you play the Jets, more favorable game scripts. But, he's not someone that I feel like has had his best game of the year. All right. I think, he is touchdown dependent right now, but he hasn't had a 100-yard game. Early in the season, we were very impressed. Like, hey, he had 25, 33, 20 receiving yards, right? Relevant in that aspect of the game has been virtual. I don't think he's had like one catch in the last 5 weeks. But I do feel like he's due for a big game. It's most likely going to be at home where maybe he puts together, 150 total in 2.
Yeah, he's definitely due for a good rushing game. And like you said, his passing game usage is really, head scratching after the first couple of games of the season, especially that primetime game against Green Bay. Like, oh shit, he's actually gonna be using the passing game this year, and then that just completely disappeared. We'll see about Mr. Trubisky. That's my biggest question for them. If you look at any like advanced metrics, I know people see the fantasy totals are super impressed by what Trubisky's done this year, and we said it before the season started. We talked about it last week how this offense is going to prop him up. But he literally has one of the worst Pro Football Focus grades. He has the number 1 off-target throw percentage, according to ESPN. Like, just tons and tons of metrics that match with, if you watch the games, how poor he's actually throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. So if they want any chance down the road, and if Jordan Howard owners want to keep this thing going, they need to keep leads. Trubisky's going to have to carry this offense too. So we really need to see him play better.
Yeah, it's that time. We'll see what the Bears are made of. The Jags and the Colts, that's the first time these two teams are playing each other in Indianapolis. Looks like Andrew Luck is, he's been looking good. The Jags D, I don't know what's up with him. I mean, is this a spot you'd consider a high risk potential shootout? Like, is this for a game worth stacking? We've seen Bortles against the Colts flukely, right? Put it together. And yeah, T.Y. Hilton, he's a big play guy. They'll line him up in the slot. He'll avoid Jalen getting shadowed by Ramsey, I think. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, A.J. Bowie's out. He's already been ruled out. Jags get Fournette back. We'll see if they've been really pass heavy this year. In the past, when Fournette has missed games, they've been pass heavy. But then when he comes back, they return to this run heavy offense. I'm curious to see what they do here in this game. But if it does stay pass heavy, if the Colts can put their foot on the gas and score some points on offense, the big thing is the Colts are playing at such a fast pace and they're throwing the ball a ton. So if they can put points up, this is a good shootout spot. I think that most people won't. They'll look at Jacksonville and they won't consider it whatsoever. So I think it's a good move. And the biggest thing is the offensive line for the Colts. They just haven't allowed any sacks or any hits on Andrew Luck, which has allowed him to thrive in this quick paced short throw offense. So I agree. I think this is definitely a spot. And if you told anyone at the beginning of the season that the Colts would be favored in this game, they would think you were crazy.
Oh yeah, it's hard to imagine, but this Jags team has shown, like, if their defense is not playing like top 3 defense that week, that they're gonna find themselves in some difficult spots. So. I'm surprised. We knew that last year. Blake Bortles was their quarterback, but just because they got as far as they didn't mean it was necessarily sustainable. So we'll see. They believe in him, though, right?
Did you hear when Dante Fowler got traded to the Rams at the trade deadline? Apparently, the Jags turned down an offer for Fowler for Bridgewater in the offseason.
I guess they can afford to do that. They have Blake Bortles. They're good. They don't need.
Didn't consider that.
They're fine. Why would they? They don't need Bridgewater. They have Blake Bortles, dude. He almost got them to the Super Bowl.
God, funny NFL teams.
At least they don't have Alex Smith on a large contract. But can he do something against Tampa, or is something's got to give, man? Right? No. Jordan Reed. Can Jordan Reed do something against Tampa?
And that is what really is mind blowing. We talk about all these other guys, but Reed is actually healthy, getting targets. And if before the season you drafted Jordan Reed in your season long, you're like, okay, he's still healthy by week 10. He leads the team in targets, yet he's like outside the top 10 in fantasy tight ends. That formula doesn't add up. Yet it's happening, and it's really hard to explain why it's happening. So I don't know if it doesn't happen in this spot, it'll never happen. This should be a game where Washington is forced to press the issue through the air. We'll see if they use Jordan Reed downfield, or I don't know, because now Paul Richardson's out for the year. Maurice Harris randomly had a huge game last week. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to expect. You're more tuned in than I am on the Redskins, so I defer to you on what you think is going to happen.
It's a banged up O-line.
Yeah,
It's completely decimated. It's looking kind of like where they were at this point last year when they lost Scherf and had Trent Williams sideline and Moses was banged up. But they had Kirk Cousins, and they had no receivers, but Kirk was really willing to sling the ball, and Jordan Reed put together some nice games. And even like Maurice Harris, Mo Harris, and even Doxson had like a game against Seattle last year. So you'd think, Alex Smith just isn't Kirk. From what I see, he's not really throwing the ball downfield. The Redskins, in all fairness, have a much better defense, and they had more success running the ball than they did last year. So it seems like that's the game plan here. And against Tampa Bay, they're going to try and slow it down and count on their defense to get pressure on Fitz and cause some turnovers. But other than that, I mean, I can't consider playing anyone on the Skins, but maybe AP.
Yeah, see that's the thing. And we talk about matchups a lot, but things can go. I think game script is way more important than matchups and figuring out what's going to happen in the game. Because if you told us last week, you look at it, right? The Redskins are great, like really, really great at stopping the run, and then Ito Smith and Tevin Coleman just destroy them. Mm-hmm. There's just massive holes being opened, and we haven't seen that before all year. And then there are many cases, receivers against, quote unquote, tougher cornerback matchups, passing offenses going against quote unquote funnel defenses that typically give more to the passing game than the run game. And then when you're thinking from a DFS perspective in high risk contests, or even I guess it mostly applies to DFS, but that's why some of these guys are so low owned. You get guys that are 1-2% owned because they have a tough matchup. When in reality, NFL, we really can't predict the matchups. We've still only had 8 or 9 games of data to go by, which isn't a huge amount of data, right? So, and a lot of that, especially like fantasy points per position, a lot of that depends on who you've already played. So, I think a good thing is don't get too caught up in the matchups, because you'll see games like last week where the Falcons run game just completely bowls over the Redskins run defense. And there are countless other examples of this versus, really, tough matchups. So, if you're looking for high risk contests, you're not going to just go play guys against the Jags in your low risk lineups, right? It's stupid. But for these high risk contests, and you're talking about like that Jags matchup, matchups don't matter as much as people give them credit for.
No, I agree, man. Especially like if you win tickets to that Millionaire Maker and you got to beat so many people, you really have to think outside the box. You got to think about a game literally blowing up and no one else being on it.
People won $1 million with Brock Osweiler and Albert Wilson against the Bears defense, which is really good. That's another fine example. Right.
When do you look back at the winner of the Millionaire and say, "Oh, I should have had this lineup in like 100 man"? Never. If that's the case, you're actually playing the contest wrong, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Everything goes. Like no bull. If you win a ticket to one of these, everything goes. Don't ask us. Don't ask us if I have $2,000. Like, hey, if you have $2,000 left and that's just you stacking that game, like that. Hey, you better beat 150,000 people. So. That's one way to do it.
Although Twitter's a big world, I'm sure someone can find us and ask us a question that we would definitely say no to.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's not, push the boundaries there. So last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, and I know the game's about to start here in a second. What are your thoughts on the Saints and Bengals game? The highest over and under of the week. The Saints away from the Dome, but obviously fresh in everyone's mind is that blow up. We know everyone and their mom is going to be on Tyler Boyd with AJ Green. I mean, you may as well chalk him up as the cash play of the week right on every lineup. But what are your thoughts, and how can you maybe leverage some lower-owned guys here?
Yeah, it's super reminiscent of a couple of years ago when Mohamed Sanu was still with the Bengals, and AJ Green was out, Tyler Eifert was out. Same exact situation, and Sanu was forced into that number one role. And he was always a value in DFS, and he was always pretty solid for your low-risk lineup. But didn't really have that blow-up game because now he's forced into this number one role. Doesn't really suit what he does. It's the same thing with Tyler Boyd. What's going to happen? I think he'll be fine for low-risk contests because he's going to get targets. But one, how will this Cincy offense perform without these two key playmakers? And then two, look for other guys to pick up the slack too, not just Tyler Boyd. So He's one of those guys that could be miscast as number one just due to the situation. And I think just thinking along those lines, that can help you. So I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what would be a good pivot, but looking at maybe whoever the min price receiver that starts opposite him, John Ross, they're talking him up this week as taking over that AJ Green role. So I think Ross makes perfect sense as a high risk pivot in that offense.
Oh, he's like the same as AJ Green. He'll totally take over that role.
Yeah, that's what the Bengals think. So.
Oh boy, no, yeah. I mean, there are a few good spots. Tre'Quan Smith, right? Everyone's thinking about Dez Bryant. I don't know if Dez is even on the slate. / will he even play? But Tre'Quan Smith, he hasn't had a big pop off game since last week. He had a pretty solid game, right? With he scored, but he had 11. Hold on, I'm totally lost here.
No, Tre'Quan had what? He had like 11 points, but only like a couple catches, right? He scored.
Right. Okay, yeah. He hasn't had that blow up game, but he is a big play receiver and could be very underowned here.
Here's the thing, right? This is like perfect epitome of when to play a guy in DFS. Everyone liked to play Tre'Quan last week in a shootout game. Thought he would be, a big play threat. Scores 10 points, pretty disappointing. Now this week they signed Dez Bryant. Everyone's like, oh shit, Tre'Quan's season's over. Whatever.
Yeah.
And now they're going up against Cincinnati in a high total game, and literally no one's going to play Tre'Quan Smith on the road, right? And that's how you should be thinking if you're playing a high risk contest in DFS.
Pretty much my thoughts. He just had a better way with the words than Brian. But yeah, exactly right. It's like, think of the narrative. Think about what people see. The island games, those main games affect the way people perceive teams. And right now it's very easy to look at Tre'Quan Smith as an afterthought with this Dez Bryant signing, but don't think it'll affect him this week.
No, if anything, it affects one. Cam Meredith is on IR, so he's no longer there. He wasn't playing that many snaps anyways. Yeah. It also affects Ben Watson and Dan Arnold, the tight ends, because I assume Dez is going to play this slot, big tight end, big receiver type role on the inside, and Tre'Quan can still run free on the outside. So I don't know if it affects Tre'Quan as much as people were expecting it to. So I just in agreement with you. I think it's a good spot for him.
Awesome. Well, let's enjoy this game. Thank you guys for joining us. Give us a follow at Occupy Fantasy. You know where to find us. I'm looking right now. Hopefully you win a ticket tonight to this. I
see you in first right now. I see you in first.
We'll see. I need Yaroslav Halak to, stop a shot. He's allowed 3 goals so far. The chalk net miner of the slate. So anytime there's a chalk net miner, they apparently get lit up this year.
Yeah, just ask Matt Murray.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Never rostering Matt Murray again. Even if his price is $5,000. Even if they make him for free, if they were just like, hey, you can just play him without paying for a goalie, I'd rather pay up.
Get a free square? Like, no, I don't want it.
No, I'm fine. Thank you. Love, enjoy.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you only play NFL, you too can have fun and get your goalies blown up if you play NHL DFS. So join the fun and commiserate with us next week.
It's the most fun. It's the most fun to play a goalie, and then within 2 minutes he's already allowed 2 goals, and then 5 minutes then the backup's already in. It's amazing. It's there. Forget garbage time there.
Those are the nights you can go to bed early. So,
all righty, guys. We'll catch you next week. Good luck in the single game slate and this Sunday.
Yep. Take care, guys. Good luck. Thanks.